This is Dr. Jerome Corsi. Today it is October 15th, 2024. It's Tuesday. Apologize for having the use a cell phone, but we're having an internet outage right now. And rather than not do a podcast today, I thought we'll just use the cell phone and make it work. At any rate, you can follow me on X at Corsi Jerome1, and on Substack it's at JeromeCorsiPhD.substack.com. We're doing podcasts here on the TruthCentral.com every weekday. On God's Five Stone, which is our 501c3, that's G-O-D, no apostrophe, and the S, G-O-D-S, you spell out five, F-I-V-E, and stones is plural, gods5stones.com. It's our 501c3 for the election integrity issues of the algorithms. And clearly you'll recognize this is the David and Goliath story, where David picks up 5 smooth stones from a brook in order to go after Goliath. Now, we've got 2 major stories today, which I think are really important. One is Andrew Paquette has found an algorithm in the Pennsylvania voter roll ID. This is the State Board of Election ID for Pennsylvania. Now, that means 2 of the battleground states, both Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. We have found algorithms in the database that are being used for the official election. Now, again, for those who are following the story, you understand that algorithms are mathematical formulas. They're cryptography. What they do is they scramble the data in an elaborate way that allows for non-existent voters, fictional characters, to be made up and put into the database so that the records are not easily recognizable as fictional. These fictional records are then able to be given State Board of Election ID numbers so they can vote. And then the criminals who devised this scheme, which I think, by the way, is a intelligence agency level of complexity. You can see some of the graphs that we've got. It's very mathematical to decipher these things. And I'm sure that reading the paper that's up there will be difficult for most readers. But it has to be presented its full authenticity, its full complexity, in order for the analysis that Paquette has done to be credible to experts. The point is that I believe this can be used in a mail-in ballot scheme where the criminals who have created these algorithms, and I'm beginning to increasingly think this has to be a intelligence agency operation. Not only the complexity of these algorithms, but to get them inside a state database, State Board of Election database, to embed them there requires inside help. And you have to be working on the computer where the State Board of Election maintains its voter registration database file, because this actually, the algorithms get embedded directly into the software. And what they do is they permit the creation of these false voters with legitimate IDs so that whomever is running the software during or before an election can say, well, I've got 300,000 false records. And like a card scheme where you're marking cards, you can put those false records into the deck of all voters so that only you know where they are. Then when it comes time you want to use some of these false voters to swing or steal an election, Kamala Harris is not doing so well, so we better start voting some of our clone voters. Clone voters are duplicate voters, multiple registrations for the same person. And if we start doing that, we'll change the numbers. So you can say, well, we'll do it. If I was running this scheme as a political scientist, and my experience in doing simulations of elections and predicting elections, you could say, well, do you want Kamala Harris to win by 1%, 3%, or 5%? You want to come in early in the day? You want it to be a late surge? How do you want the vote to look? Just give me the script and I'll make it look that way. Because with, say, 300,000 false votes that I can vote by just making sure they each got a mail-in ballot that was voted through the machine, we've got two numbers that match, the number of the voter and the number of the ballot, that top page that went through the machine. I know I've got a certifiable vote. Well, that's going to be hard to dislodge unless you went out and did forensic examination into the field and said that this person doesn't exist. You would not know this was an illegitimate vote. It's a devious scheme, but I think it's one that we're finding virtually in every state we look at. So if our elections are this contaminated in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, two battleground states, I think this explains a lot of what we saw in Pennsylvania. Now, I'm going to make a couple more points, and then, Chris, I want you to comment on this. And then I want to go to another aspect of the this whole algorithm story. But the number of records that are suspicious in Pennsylvania are enormous. I mean, there's 26,453 registrations that predate the voter's birth. Well, how do you register before you're born? Almost 30,000 voters recorded votes before their 15th birthday. Well, they're not supposed to be able to vote. You've got active records, which are supposed to be removed after voters miss two successive federal elections. But there's yet in Philadelphia alone 40,000 records that are outdated active records. Okay, so there's tens of thousands, presence of, maybe as many as 500,000 records that look to be inactive records for 6 years or more on the database, plus all these clones and other problems in the Philadelphia database. And you've got a state election that's ripe for fraud. And again, if this voter database is so corrupt, it is hard to believe it's being represented as legitimate. Chris, you want to comment?
Yeah, I agree with this too. If you look at what the numbers are saying here, and of course in the other reports too, it's amazing how they actually. I suppose it's amazing. It's purposeful and meticulous how they got these things done. It's to the point where it took a mathematical mind like Andrew Paquette's to finally break this apart. But wouldn't they think that somebody might have looked at this years down the road?
Well, no, I think they never suspected these would be found. I mean, it takes a real code breaking is not easy to do.
No.
You can recognize a code when you can't read a message because it's scrambled. And here you look at the voters and how they're ordered, not in that they're no longer a function of the voter ID is no longer a function of when the person registered. So you've got an odd arrangement of the records to begin with. How are these records organized if it's not by sequential order in which they registered? So that's the beginning. As any one of these card marking schemes, you got to shuffle the deck. You got to get out of order.
Yeah, make sure somebody knows he doesn't get a hold of these and try to figure this stuff out. Yeah, keep shuffling, keep moving things around. Deception is always necessary when it comes to these things.
And when you shuffle the deck, if you take a deck right out of the manufacturer, from the manufacturer, and just put marked cards in it, it's obvious they're the ones out of order. So therefore, you've got to do something to shuffle the deck. And so you don't order the numbers according to when they registered. You have some other mathematical way of ordering them. And then you can slip in there records that are false because, it's just another person. And it looks normal, even if you've just cloned it or made it up, or it's a ghost voter. And this is, again, the beginning of a fraud that's very ingenious. And every one of the states seems to have a slightly different mathematical formula, and they're not applied in all counties. For instance, the counties here that involve Philadelphia and Pittsburgh are the two counties that are picked, which makes most sense. Those are the most Democratic counties, most of the urban counties in these northeastern states, in fact, across the country, it's the cities that are Democratic. Most of the rest of the country is Republican. And it's the cities that are going woke and the cities that are going to this extreme left neo-Marxism. So, you know, the battle we've got this year is whether or not we're going to become a neo-Marxist country, a failed country, third world country, because these databases look like third world country databases, except that they're not. They're very carefully re-engineered by intelligence operatives. And I've been maintaining that the CIA has been running our politics now since the Kennedy assassination. And I think we're in a Truman Show at this point. Now, there's a second article, and this one's up on American Thinker today. This article highlights a case that was decided in Arizona by a judge who I thinks did a very, very good job of doing this. Liberty is his name, and this is I'll get that name correct in just a minute. But with the internet down, it's hard to. Chris, you can tell me the judge is named in the first couple of paragraphs of the article, and let's get the judge correct. So if you want to come back on and we get the judge correct.
Yeah, we'll get that. Michael J. Liberty. You have that right.
Liberty.
Yes.
Okay, so Liberty, it was looking at a case of 2020 election in Arizona. The 2020 election in Arizona, there was one kind. I'm sure the algorithms are in Arizona. We haven't looked at Arizona yet, but I'm sure we get a chance, we'll find them. The Arizona is, of course, one of the other battleground states in which all of these mail-in ballots came in 2024. Or 2020, I'm sorry. And then 2022, I'm sure it happened again. So one county, Cochise County, refused to certify the election. Now, in Arizona, the Secretary of State, in every odd numbered year, writes an election procedures manual. And the election procedures manual that governed the 2020 election said that if a county did not submit its canvass, its certification of the vote by a deadline, the Secretary of State could canvass the state and certify the election without reporting or including the missing county. Well, the judge in this case, a federal district judge, said that that's unconstitutional because what it does is it disenfranchises the voters of that county who are now not able to be counted at all. Now, why is this decision important? Well, what it means is that a given county can say, we don't want to certify an election. So if a given county is onto the algorithms and says, we do not want to certify an election because the state database, the voter database, has an algorithm in it, well, that could throw a monkey wrench into that state certifying the election at all. Okay, so now we take and this would be a constitutional crisis. It's not clear what we would do in this instance, but the point is, if the goal of the fraud here, the algorithms, is to create false votes for non-existent people that yet can be voted and certified, then the remedy is going to be slowing up certification to get enough time to demand forensic examination, going out and seeing these mail-in ballots to see how many of these people are really existing, how many are who they say they are. We don't do that right now. We don't check multiple registrations. We don't check multiple people voting. They get away with it because our system is full of holes. We look at even in a recount, nobody goes out into the community and says, is this mail-in ballot a real person? You barely get to challenge the signatures as being real. I mean, this is really a such system that is completely broken. I don't think it can be repaired. I think we need a new voting system altogether. At any rate, the point of the algorithms is if you're playing cards 21 in a casino and it's found out the casino has using marked cards. That casino can't prove you lost a single hand. So you can't use a corrupt database, marked cards, to certify a result that you lost a hand at 21. Well, similarly, you can't use the database of the voters in a given state that has an algorithm to certify that election, because that election could have been the result of an algorithm, not a legitimate vote. What this does is it empowers one county to block a state from certifying the election. And we're going to be making sure the Board of Supervisors are fully aware of this court decision and the fact that their states have algorithms in the database. And Andrew Paquette is busy doing other states as well. We now have a list of states. We've got New York on the website right now. If you take a look at God's Five Stones, we're reporting on New York, Ohio, Wisconsin, and now Pennsylvania. We also know there are algorithms present in Texas and in New Jersey and in Hawaii. Texas and New Jersey are being written up now, and they'll be reported on very soon. But Andrew Paquette has already found the algorithms in those two states. So we'll be getting Texas and New Jersey here very quickly added to the data on God's Five Stones. And by the way, please take a look at it. There's a lot of good videos in my interviews. I think you need to educate yourself on the algorithms. They could be the most important story of 2024. Also, it's an international story because it appears that the same methodology is being used in elections in Europe. In Europe, you've got a situation where the last parliamentary election, the conservatives were doing very well in the first ballot. Second ballot, the left surged, they said. And the left surge meant the left won the election. But when you called up into Italy and France, said, Dr. Corsi, the surge is not occurring at the polls. The surge is occurring in the computers. I think that's where that's the basic thing that we have here to contend with as we go forward, is we're going to be making sure that there's no election fraud by use of these algorithms, and we're going to be very vigilant about doing so. Okay, another topic. Chris, you want to comment anything about the elections before we move on? We're getting very close to the elections now.
At this point, I'm not even sure if the Democrats want to cheat for Kamala Harris. You have you're sitting here watching Bill Clinton in his speech saying, "Well, if illegals, if the immigrants were properly vetted, then Laken Riley would never have been killed." You have Joe Biden even there are articles about Joe Biden even kind of distancing himself or kind of sabotaging Kamala Harris's campaign a little bit. It's almost like they're going to try. Obviously, these algorithms are going to come into play in the future. But let's put it this way: if they won't cheat for Kamala Harris, they're looking towards 2026 and 2028. So let's not let a Trump win. Let our guard down over this either.
Well, also the algorithms will be used in down ballot elections.
Yeah, that's another thing.
You know, for House of Representatives and Senate, if the Democrats decide they can't win with Kamala, they're going to certainly try to steal enough votes in the House and Senate to be able to block anything Trump might want to do. And these algorithms appear to have been in many of the states since 2007. And I'm wanting to know how many elections of people who are in Congress today, how many were determined by the algorithms rather than the vote. I don't know. But it's a legitimate question. Again, you can't have intelligence agency schemes that would permit cheating on mail-in ballots be part of the official state voter registration database. It's a violation of a lot of laws, and it simply makes no sense in terms of the integrity of the election or the confidence of the public that the election result is correct. Okay, I want to switch topics. I'm going to cover another topic today. I have here a manuscript from Archbishop Vigano in Rome, in Italy. And this is his excommunication. We're going to publish a book called J'accuse, which is in French is I accuse, which was the famous statement of Emile Zola when the Dreyfus Affair occurred in the 1800s in France. And Dreyfus, of course, was a Jew who was wrongly accused of espionage and treason. And he was sentenced in 2 court-martials. He was sentenced to life imprisonment in Devil's Island. Well, it was ultimately revealed that a key document in question was a forgery, and Dreyfus was innocent. And J'accuse was a statement saying that it was really the French government, the French military that were so anti-Semitic that they were the criminals, not Dreyfus. Okay, and so what Archbishop Vigano was saying is, even though Pope Francis excommunicated him, it's Pope Francis that is the heretic or the apostate, because Pope Francis has moved away from the Catholic religion, which Bergoglio is redefining as a woke church. And the Catholic Church has never been woke. It's a value relativism that Vigano rightly identifies with satanic, with ultimately the Antichrist, and with ultimately the demise of the Catholic Church unless it's rooted out. This is an incredibly important statement, and we'll be publishing it here before the election on Amazon. And so I'm writing the introduction to it right now, and we're very honored to get this from Archbishop Vigano. But it's going to be a major statement around the world, and the J'accuse here is Bergoglio is being called out for his apostasy, his moving away from the traditional Catholic faith, which is rooted going back 2,000 years to its origin with Jesus Christ. And this is again going to be a worldwide red statement, and we're happy to have it. We're happy to be able to publish it at Post Hill Press, where I'm now, by the way, a acquiring editor. So I can acquire books and can work with authors to acquire books for Post Hill Press, that was founded and is operated by CEO Anthony Zaccardi, who published my book, The Abomination, when he was editor at Simon & Schuster in 2008. That was the #1 New York Times bestseller. And Anthony and I, over the years, have become friends. All right, 1 or 2 other topics I want to cover. Certainly the economy. And with no internet, I'm not able to do very much updating in terms of where gold is. I have the internet on my cell phone, but not on my computers. And so we're finding that gold right now is trading at over $2,600 an ounce. And get a copy of this book, How the Coming Global Crash Will Create an Historic Gold Rush. It's begun. Call Swiss America at 1-800-519-6268. 1-800-519-6268. And spend some time on the Truth Central. We have a lot of information about gold and silver. Some free reports you can get from Swiss America on the coming digital currency, the secret war on cash, on the historical value of precious metals to preserve purchasing power. Most of these you can get by just filling out the forms and get an electronic version. You can also get this Walking Liberty $50 offer, where you get up to 250 of these coins, which are about 99.99% silver for their value in silver. It's a one-time introductory offer, but I really recommend you take advantage of it because you need to have some silver. It's going to appreciate dramatically. And at just over $31 an ounce, I think the possibility of silver doubling will happen quicker than gold doubling, with gold at $2,600 and something an ounce now. When we started talking about this, gold was $1,900 an ounce. You would have benefited $700 an ounce had you listened to our advice several months ago. Visit Swiss America. It's consultative selling. I've been working with them for 20 years without problems. Okay, 1 or 2 other stories I want to cover quickly. We're seeing the expansion of the war with Israel. Israel is now doing a major incursion into Lebanon to get Hezbollah. And Israel has announced that they're going into about a fourth of the country, because they're giving notice to evacuate. And Israel is going to clean out Hezbollah before Hezbollah has a chance to attack Israel. And also, Israel is expanding its efforts in Gaza with a new push to the north. I think Israel is going to completely root out Hamas out of Gaza, even if it means depopulating Gaza, which might not be a bad idea for a while. Iran suffered over the weekend a major cyber attack in both its nuclear facilities and its government facilities. I think this is the beginning of an apocalyptic attack that Israel is going to launch on Iran. I think Israel is going to take out the nuclear sites. I think they'll try to eliminate the clerics and the mullahs, probably try to kill the Ayatollah, probably try to decimate the command structure of the Revolutionary Guard. It's an existential moment for Israel, and Israel is not going to miss the opportunity. If Kamala Harris gets in, they'll support Hamas, and our government will turn against Israel. I'd hate to see that happen. Ukraine is now going to get the celebrities and the protected people in the cities, the men, and conscript them into the military. Ukraine has all but lost this war and won't acknowledge it. And if we do have NATO authorize in the United States the use of long-range missiles to hit inside of Russia, depths inside Russia, Russia will retaliate, and this war could easily go nuclear. China is also going through a military exercise in which they have surrounded Taiwan, simulating an invasion. So the world under Biden-Harris has already turned to be a dangerous world in our cities, gangs. We're finding Venezuelan criminals are taking over towns like Aurora in Colorado. I think we're seeing that the streets of downtown cities are not safe. The Democrats are just proposing chaos and destruction. And their agenda can only destroy, and it can only kill. Because it's a destruction it's a satanic agenda that has no value for human life. The world economic situation is extremely serious. BRICS nations are going to be meeting at the end of the year, and they're going to declare, I believe, a gold-backed currency, which would undermine the position of the United States dollar as a reserve currency. I'm going to wrap up today, and I apologize for the abbreviated version given that we're on a cell phone. Chris, any final comments you want to make before we wrap up?
The only thing is be vigilant out there and keep an eye on the news, keep an eye on the voting results of the next, this year, 2 years from now, and of course, 4 years from now. The funny thing is about the algorithms. You were mentioning that it also affects the down ballot. And some people will say, well, let's see, what do 100 votes matter? 100 votes in a lot of places does matter, and 100 votes in local elections matters. How many state Senate votes or assembly votes, if you will, state house votes, depending on what you call it, or state legislature votes, that's the best way to put it, are decided by anywhere between 50 and 150 votes sometimes, especially in small districts.
It's very important that we get rid of these algorithms. And it's very important that we figure out a way to have fair elections. But it's also very important we get rid of this woke agenda.
Yes.
And that's going to take some doing. And Archbishop Vigano is making a major step and a major effort here to eliminate the woke agenda. And in the end, God always wins. God will win here too. We will be back tomorrow. I encourage you in the spirit of 2 Chronicles 7:14 to get on your knees and ask God's repentance for letting it get to this point. But I'm confident that God did not create this experience for Satan to win. Dr. Jerome Corsi will be back tomorrow. Today it's Tuesday, October 15th, 2024. God bless.